What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we begin our talks on the War Cleric, reintroduced in 2024, and we have seen a few changes, and I am excited to be going through those. This is also our final Cleric before we move on to Druid. But before we jump into it, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already, click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded, and share the video with your friends. The War Cleric has always been a staple, right? This is the one that runs straight into battle, giving out heals and being heavily armored, using some really cool weaponry, that kind of thing. Kind of your sword and board, your somewhat of a Gish type of thing, although the focus on melee weapons is not really super strong. You're not getting a ton of extra damage necessarily, but you're pretty sturdy, and that's nice. Having a cleric tank is a good thing. With the changes, though, let's see just how impactful that was. Now, of course, when we looked at this back in the 2014 rules, this actually failed our ranking system. We actually gave it a 6 out of 10, which was not good. So it had a few things that it really just lacked. A lot of that was the fact that War Priest was split basically into two features, which if you haven't checked out what I did to fix it back for the 2014 version, I've got the homebrew subclass, of course, available on there for you to check out. And of course, in the description, well, above the description where you click the join button, all that good stuff, all of my subclass fix guides, all that are on there. And so it's one of those that's included in that. But yeah, basically, War Priest was just underpowered by itself. The War God's Blessing essentially was just the second part of War Priest, and so it was kind of weird to have those split up. It just didn't really work. The Guided Strike only worked on yourself, and so there were just a lot of things that just fell short, right? And so I wanted to make it better, and so I feel like we did that. Well, now Wizards is doing that, and so let's see what they have done. Starting off, we have our spell list, of course, and there are very few changes actually from the original. Now, of course, we used to get some spells at first level. Now all the first level spells come at third level along with the second level spells. So now we get Guiding Bolt, Magic Weapon, Shield of Faith, and Spiritual Weapon. 3 of those are the same. We used to get Divine Favor, and now that is where Guiding Bolt slots in. Honestly, it's fine. I mean, still, a lot of this is already on the cleric list, so it's not a whole lot of new stuff. I was really hoping to see some things outside of the cleric list, maybe borrowing from some paladin things, but what are you gonna do? At 5th level, we get Crusader's Mantle and Spirit Guardians. That's the same as before. Again, Crusader's Mantle, not too bad to have. In this case, I probably would rather go with Bless, though. I don't know. With me being so heavily armored, I'm probably going to stick with Bless more than Crusader's Mantle. I can see a situation where you're fighting a lot of low AC enemies where you may want to go with this, but generally I'm going to want to benefit more from the accuracy boost than the buffs that come online with Crusader's Mantle. That's just me. At 7th level, we get a new spell. We did get Stone Skin before. We now get Fire Shield, and Freedom of Movement is the same. That, I think, is a buff in this case. Fire Shield is not too bad. And then for 9th level, we get Hold Monster, same as before, and we get Steel Wind Strike. Now, this used to be Flame Strike. Of course, Flame Strike is 8d6, essentially, damage, half of that being fire, half of that being radiant, and you get a big cylinder that you get to use with that, and there's a dex save involved. Steel Wind Strike is different. It's 6d10 force damage, which is very good, and it's up to 5 targets that are within your melee range, and then you get a teleport with it. Definitely good, especially if you're getting ganged up on. You can hit 5 different people for 6d10 force damage each. That's a lot of damage. So not too bad there. Honestly, I'm fine with that. We're gonna probably be up in the fray a lot of the time, so I'm okay with that. So that's fine. It's fine. Honestly, the spell list, I don't have too many issues with it, and I think generally it is buffed. Maybe it's slightly, but I do think that it is actually better than what it was before. So that's cool. Moving on, we did get bonus proficiency at level 1 before. However, that is removed because that is just Divine Order now, right? Divine Order is what allows you to either take the exact version that this used to have, or you can of course go with the thaumaturge option. But yeah, so now all clerics get access to that. So technically it's a nerf because it's something that made this special, but you can still have it because now all clerics get it. So it's kind of a weird thing there. But you get more flexibility if you don't want to do that. 9 times out of 10 as a War Cleric, you're going to want it and you're going to take it anyway, but just saying. So at our first level of being this subclass, which is now 3, it was 1, we get War Priest. And so basically what this is we get to make an attack as a bonus action, Wisdom modifier times. Now, it has changed slightly, ever so slightly. So used to, you were required to take the attack action in order for this to work, and it recharged on a long rest. Both not so great, right? Of course, this is kind of the same wording that the monk has had to deal with Flurry of Blows, and it changed in the same way going into the 2024 rules. And so overall, we are now getting better with that because we no longer are required to take the attack action. It's whenever we want. So definitely cool. And then it's a short rest recharge, which is also pretty cool. However, why is it that we are still limited? I'm thinking about this in terms of what we're doing and where all the other clerics and all the other subclasses from other classes are. Why are we making this a recharge, even if it is a short rest? I still feel like we should, maybe if you need to push this to the 6th level feature, then okay, we can talk about that. But why are we spending any kind of resource in any kind of wisdom modifier times per whatever in order to make this bonus action attack? It also is going to we're going to run into a couple of issues with this being a little redundant a little bit later as well. So it's decent, but there are a couple things that I want to talk about when we talked about some later features. So next we also get Guided Strike at level 3. Of course, this used to be at level 2, but basically adding 10 to an attack roll with a use of our Channel Divinity. Used to, we could only use it on ourselves, and now we can use it on an ally within 30 feet of us. However, it costs a reaction if we want to do it that way. If we're using it on ourselves, there is no cost. So basically, Guided Strike is the exact same thing now as what War God's Blessing added to it before. And it's funny because I actually did this in my rework when I did this way back, which is kind of cool. Now, I made this the level 1 feature and it was not tied to Channel Divinity, so I changed that part and I made it a reaction on both sides. But still, the idea is there. And so to me, I think that this is a consensus among the community that this is something that needed to happen. Just put those together. Stop splitting these features up like this. I understand that a lot of times when I'm talking about having cohesion through the subclass, that having things build on each other is a good thing. You also want to have a little bit of diversity in there as well, and just being able to just now be able to do it for a little bit more out there. We're giving up quite a bit, I feel like, for something like this, for something that is just an accuracy buff, right? Especially with the fact that we can also have Bless going on at the same time. I feel like it needed to be more. And so now, basically, Guided Strike is all of that in one go, which is good. I think that's a huge buff, and it leaves room for War God's Blessing, which is where we're going to next at level 6. This is the same name of feature, but of course it's completely changed because that entire feature has now been moved to Guided Strike. Instead, we get a different Channel Divinity option here, and basically we can now cast Shield of Faith or Spiritual Weapon without using a spell slot or concentration. They last for a minute unless we cast one of those spells again or become incapacitated or die. This is cool, right? This, of course, gives us the legacy version of Spiritual Weapon and now allows us to do the old Spiritual Weapon plus Spirit Guardians combo, which is really good, obviously. This is now the only cleric that can actually do this. Definitely cool. You also can now do Shield of Faith buffing on your allies to help their ACs while doing other things, which is also kind of good. I think this is a really good use of your Channel Divinity and certainly going to be what we use a lot of the time. I like it. Now, to me, we now have two very useful channel divinities with the plus 10 bonus to attack rolls. Now, we're going to need to make sure we save this for something that is especially important, right? When the rogue is getting ready to do a bunch of sneak attack damage, when somebody's about to get smited, or, you know, something really big is when we're going to use that. But this gives us something that we can use a little more liberally, and I like that a lot. Being able to go without concentration on these two big spells is good. Is it insanely busted, game-breaking, anything? No, I don't think it is, and I can't say that this is, you know, just something that's absolutely devastating and puts this cleric way above everybody else. I don't think so, but it is nice. It's definitely handy to be able to be more like the old cleric was. And finally, level 17, we get Avatar of Battle, very similar to what it used to be. We would get resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage for all non-magical weapons. The only difference now is the removal of the non-magical weapon caveat. And a lot of that just comes from how 2024 is handling a lot of that. That wording is really disappearing from pretty much everything, and so it's just kind of part of it. So technically it's a buff, right? The only other issue with that, though, is that you used to get a lot more bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage in the monster manual as you got to higher levels. A lot of that has changed to psychic or force or some other type of damage, and so I don't think this is as good as what it used to be. And in my fix that I did before, I actually gave the ability to share this with allies. But again, I think that this is just changed with how the game has shifted. Now, of course, you're going to have plenty of little minions and things like that are trying to hit you with bows and arrows and stuff, just to help the action economy and things like that at high levels. So how much of a difference is this going to make? Probably not as much as we think, at least not as much as it used to. So where do we land on this? This is a weird one, right? I want to like this subclass a lot. I really do. I want to give this the much better ranking. I want to make this just loads better. But unfortunately, I don't think that it is anything insanely different, right? I do think that the spell list is slightly better. I do think that War Priest is now slightly better. However, I still wish that we could just bonus action attack anytime. And like I said earlier, this conflicts with War God's Blessing, right? I didn't mention it with War God's Blessing, but it conflicts because if we're going to be casting Spiritual Weapon, then we can't also make that bonus action attack. They're both bonus actions, right? So that's a part of that's all combined, right? So that becomes a little redundant. Now, of course, what is good about War God's Blessing is that it's not a spell slot in there anymore. So that means we can still cast a spell as an action because of how the new rules work. We can now just one spell slot per turn, and that's different, much simpler. So that opens up a little bit if you're wanting to lay down a Cure Wounds or something that's devastating on the damage side as an action. You can do that. Guided Strike, like I said, I probably would save it for just those big hits. Otherwise, I'm using War God's Blessing most of the time just to set up what I want to for my allies. But even then, like I said, sometimes I don't know. I feel like this may not always be the best thing just to be able to do this. It is nice being able to do what the old cleric did, and for that, obviously, I have to recognize that is good. And ultimately, a lot of these features did get buffed. I don't think that it is insane how much they have been buffed. I really don't think that it is at a place where I think that it deserves any amount of points that is more than one. So honestly, I'm going to give this a 1 point bump from what it was before. It's going from a 6 to a 7, which technically now means it passes. It's not in a grand fashion, but it is technically passing now, and so that is what we are going to go with. So let me know down below, is there something here that I'm missing? Should this be the 10 out of 10? I personally don't think so, but I'd love to know your thoughts down below. Because it did pass now, we are going to build one later this week, and I'm looking forward to doing that. Until next time, stay safe out there, stay healthy, We'll see you later. Bye-bye.